Hello and welcome to the Biology of Herbalism. This video is going to lay out what we're going to be covering in the program, but before we do that, I just want to thank you so much for putting your trust in me. I am deeply honored by that, and I promise to do my absolute best to uphold that trust because I do not take it lightly, and I want to provide you with the best herbal training that I possibly can. You probably already know me, but just in case, let me reintroduce myself. I'm Joby Hawthorne Brown, aka the Feral Plant Hag, and I went to college for 6 years to study biology and herbalism so that you don't have to. I first opened my online herbal apothecary back in 2011, and now I use permaculture principles to grow edible and medicinal native plants here on Kalapuya land in Oregon's Willamette Valley. And I'm an herbal educator known for sharing grounded information through an accessible and anti-capitalist lens without expecting you to live perfectly natural or clean or forego modern advancements like vaccinations. So this program is an amalgam of many of my experiences, from my degree in biology, my early formal herbal training, the unlearning that I've done over the last 10 years through listening to folks from backgrounds other than my own, from 15 years of growing the plants themselves and getting to know them that way, and running a self-sustaining online apothecary through a pandemic. So in this program, all of these things are sort of mashed together and structured in a way that will guide you through learning the introductory fundamentals all the way through more advanced ideas and techniques. So whether you're a complete beginner looking for a deep dive, or you are more intermediate and looking for a more critical thinking type of perspective, this is going to be great for you. We'll start off with some herbal foundations, things like basic chemistry, botany, philosophy, and safety. And while you can go through most of the coursework in whatever order you like, it's really important that you do go through these lessons first, since they'll be crucial in understanding how and why the ideas that we're going to be covering later are going to work. These are the lessons that we'll have to build on top of. Then after we have those fundamentals under our belt, each module is categorized by how those herbs will function in the body, so that you can choose which ones you might want to work with based on more than just symptoms. A lot of herbal books or herbal programs are laid out by matching an herb with a disease or an ailment, and that is one way to do it, but categorizing them by how they act in the body through their herbal actions is going to give us a much deeper understanding of how they work, rather than just picking one at random and hoping that it works. So we have the herbal actions modules. We also have separate modules on different medicine making techniques. And again, you can go through these in whatever order feels the most appropriate to you. Whether you want to learn about the plants first and then go to how to extract and preserve them, or if you want to learn all of the medicine making techniques and then learn about the plants after. But they do go hand in hand, so you can jump back and forth if you need to also. So if getting a good handle on all the medicine making techniques so that you feel ready to make preparations out of the plants as you get to know the plants, if that makes the most sense to you, then that's totally fine. Alternatively, since different plants can require different extraction methods based on their own individual makeup, you may want to go through and decide which plants are going to be the best fit for you first, then take the medicine making lessons as they come up later. Point being, the pace and order that you go through this is entirely up to you. But I do want to share a few of my recommended do's and don'ts that might help guide you a bit. So first off, don't feel like you have to grow or make everything that we talk about in this course. Working with what you have access to and feel comfortable with is the absolute best way to bring these plants into your life. You'll hear me say it a lot through the program, but the most potent medicine is the one that you have access to. A simple preparation that is mindfully made or even purchased will be infinitely more potent and effective than the one that you never take because you weren't comfortable with the plant, or you couldn't harvest enough, or you couldn't afford to buy it, or you couldn't source it close by. It is more than okay and even encouraged to work with what you already have and with what makes sense to you. You don't have to find the most exotic or rare or secret plant that no one's ever heard of in order for herbalism to work. That's all just marketing from supplement companies. In fact, many of the most common medicinal plants that we see that might not sound very sexy or exciting, like chamomile, rosemary, ginger, they may seem uninteresting because they're so common and we all know about them. But they're common because they've been effective for so long. So don't underestimate them in favor of something that might be harder to grow in your area, or that has to be shipped across the world, or that you can't get a hold of at all. Accessibility and practicality are the keys to consistency. And consistency is the key to this mutually beneficial relationship with these amazing plants. Okay, so don't feel pressured to do everything that you'll learn about in this program. Just start with what calls to you and go from there. And do plant and create what sparks joy for you. If you're intimidated by a plant, or just don't enjoy working with it, or the taste doesn't work for you, or you're struggling to grow it in your region, that's not going to nurture an enjoyable relationship with that plant. And you don't have to force yourself to. You can push your comfort zone to try new things for sure. But it's okay to nurture what comes naturally to you and what you find enjoyable. You may be more drawn toward cooking with these herbs, or you may not really be interested in cooking, but you like making products. You'll find the path that's right for you as you experiment here and there. So don't feel like you have to work with every single plant that we're going to profile. We'll be detailing over 60 plants in the program, but that's only to introduce you to several different ones that may resonate with you. You are not meant to work with every single one of them right off the bat. I certainly don't work with all of them regularly. You might experiment with a lot of them, but you don't have to incorporate all of them or absorb all of the information about them at any point. Most herbalists will agree with me on this, that one of the best ways to learn herbalism is to get to know a handful of plants, maybe 10 or a dozen plants that you really connect with. Maybe start with 1 or 2 from each herbal action that we're going to cover and go from there. You can switch those out or try new ones as you feel called to. So many of these plants have multiple actions on multiple parts of the body, so there's a lot of overlap. You don't need one specific plant for every single specific issue that you might be facing, and we'll cover all of that. But the main point is you can achieve more with knowing 10 plants really well than you can with having a vague understanding of 100 different plants. So because of that idea, do take your time getting to know the plants that really resonate with you. It's one thing to understand them on paper, to read about them and get to know the research about them, but go ahead and work with them. Taste them, smell them, cook them, grow them. Watch how they change throughout the year in their different growth stages if you can. I truly believe that these are the best ways to get to know the plants so that you can build confidence in yourself and in your abilities. It's much easier to start trusting yourself and the plants when you allow yourself to take these small steps in order to experience and embody what you learn firsthand. Next is don't feel like you have to practice clinically or take one-on-one clients in order to be an herbalist. Many of us who are science-minded, myself included when I first started, might feel pulled to pigeonhole herbalism into this one Western paradigm of medicine that has been deemed legitimate. And if you didn't grow up with herbalism as part of your life or haven't had access to herbalists, that might be the only way we can picture working with herbs to help others. But the whole point of going back to these traditional methods of healing is to move away from that paradigm. That's not to say anything is wrong with the clinical herbalism path. It's very much needed, especially in medically underserved communities. But it's not the only path. And you don't have to feel like your practice is less than because you aren't a clinical herbalist. It took me a long time to realize this because my education is in biology and I was pre-med. That was the only way I could imagine herbalism being helpful or effective. But taking one-on-one clients is a huge responsibility and a liability, and it's not for everybody. You can still be an herbalist simply by developing your relationship with these plants, tending to them, working with them for yourself and your family and loved ones, sharing them with your community, creating art about them, writing about them. If you work with plants in any way, you are an herbalist, not just if you take one-on-one consultations, okay? You also don't have to rush starting any other herbal business right away either. Sharing herbal information and herbal products is a huge responsibility. It's easy to become really excited and maybe even a little bit overconfident after discovering a few plants that work really well for you because it is really exciting. But this doesn't have to be something that you profit off of. We've been taught in a capitalistic society that we need to find what we're passionate about and make a living off of it. But I know firsthand how much putting financial pressure on your passion can zap the joy right out of it. In fact, that's why I actually closed my apothecary for 5 years before I reopened it in 2020. It is perfectly acceptable to compartmentalize and have a job that is just for income so that you don't have to exploit your passions for capitalistic gain. It can be enough just to have these things bring you joy simply just by doing them. So it's not to say you can't or shouldn't start an herbal business. I certainly did. It's just to say be very mindful of your relationship with your time and energy and finances as it applies to your passions. The next one is don't expect herbal medicines to perform the same as conventional medicines, whether we're looking at it in research or in practical usage. While some plants do offer immediate results, others can take weeks or sometimes even months to show any results. With many of the more tonic or restorative plants we'll learn about, you may not even notice a difference until you've been working for a while and you look back and you go, oh yeah, I totally forgot I was having a problem with this and I really haven't been struggling with that anymore. And while there are some that do work really quickly, they're still not drugs. They're very individual, and not every plant is going to be a good fit for every person. And even if it is a good fit, there are a lot more factors and moving parts to how plants work within the individual body that can create differing results compared to a prescription drug that always acts one way on this exact mechanism in a very predictable way. Modern research and conventional medicine kind of tends to see this as a downfall in herbalism, but a lot of herbalists see this as a really cool way to personalize herbs to an individual in a way that's going to have a much longer lasting benefit. It's just a bit more work up front to match the appropriate herb to the person, rather than just throwing a prescription at a diagnosis. Next is, don't be afraid to refer back to these lessons or to your notes, even years later. I still look up plenty of information, even on herbs that I think I know really well, because new information is coming out. There may be old information that I've missed. There is always more to know about these plants. Even this program is not the end-all be-all of everything you can possibly know about them. It's just a jumping off point. And we can never get into the mindset that we already know everything there is to know about a plant. I'll teach you everything that I know about these plants from years of schooling and experience and learning from other teachers, but there are so many other schools of thought and cultural backgrounds with so much more to add. So please keep learning from others. Get books, read articles. Don't limit yourself to just learning from me. Because of this, don't place the entirety of your trust in herbs on science alone. We love that what herbalists and indigenous healers have known for centuries or even thousands of years is being proven scientifically now. And we also love that the rampant pseudoscience in wellness industry marketing is slowly being debunked by modern science. And in my own early herbal education, I insisted that what I learned be research-based. And I honestly kind of looked down my nose at practitioners or educational programs who learned from the land and learned from their elders and learned from tradition. A lot of it is still seen as old wives' tales, even by people who are on the same side. And for me, this came from my undergrad education in biology and this idea that anything that couldn't be proven repeatedly by science was invalid. And there are still a lot of people, especially in the scientific community, who feel that way. But I think, for me at least, deep down this judgment came from being maybe kind of jealous of this connection that I didn't have with the land or with my ancestors, and that it wasn't passed down to me through these traditions. And we ultimately have colonization to thank for that. And this idea that anything that science can't prove is invalid is also based in oppression. This mentality was a big part of how modern, but let's be honest, it was still pretty barbaric in the early times of science in the 19th and even in the 20th centuries. But this was how modern medicine used science to silence indigenous healers, enslaved people, really all women, but especially those who were midwives and healers, in order to place civilized male whiteness as the end-all be-all of medicine. They called everyone else witches or savages and burned them alive or threw them in institutions. And BIPOC people were even involuntarily experimented on in order to come to these scientific conclusions. Then scientists had the audacity to go through these old herbal pharmacopoeia, which were these old herbal medical texts that colonists wrote based on what they were learning as they crossed America from indigenous people. And they went through these books and they said, oh, hey, we should start to research some of these and see if we can make them into pharmaceuticals in order to make them legitimate. All as a way to separate whiteness as something righteous and above all else, because the old wives' tales aren't scientifically proven. So we love science. We need science. Science saves lives. But historically, it has also been one of the many tools of white supremacy. You know that I support a balance of modern and traditional medicine, but I still chose to be an herbalist, not a doctor, for a reason. We can support life-saving medications and procedures without supporting the medical industrial complex. All right? The next do is do be mindful of invasive plants that are detrimental to your local ecosystem. We will have a whole lesson on this, and we'll talk about native versus invasive versus weedy plants. But even as you go on from this course and are out in the world around you, it's important to always keep it in the back of your mind how your actions will impact the environment around you. It may seem like one plant can't do any harm because it's just for you and it's in your yard. But remember, birds and the wind can carry seeds for miles. That's very intentional. That's how the plants evolved to procreate. So just always keep your impact in mind. And last but certainly not least, do go easy on yourself. Your herbal journey is your own. You need to find how herbalism fits into your life, no one else's. With social media, it's so easy to compare ourselves to others. So accept inspiration when it presents itself to you, but do not feel pressured to change or live your life in a certain way in order to fit into the stereotypes of what we think an herbalist is supposed to be. However you incorporate herbalism into your life is just fine, as long as you're doing it safely and with meaning. Okay? So that's it. You made it through all of the do's and don'ts. And again, these are just recommendations for the ways that I think you might be able to get the most out of this course for yourself. If you are somebody who likes connecting with others, don't forget to join the student community. I'll put a link to it in the description below. If you have questions throughout any point in the course, there is a discussion section on each lesson. If you think it could be helpful to your other students, you can ask your question there. Or if you would like to ask me directly, you can email me anytime at info@rootcraftpnw.com. I try to get back quickly, but if you don't hear back from me within 48 hours, Monday through Friday, just shoot me a follow-up email to remind me. It may have gotten buried or it may have gotten filtered somewhere. Okay? I'm so excited for you. And again, thank you so much for being here and for trusting me. Now go forth and enjoy the biology of herbalism.